It's just that simple. Whatever one you feed, but it really isn't that simple. It's hard, it's difficult. It's really to do. So as you sit here tonight, you're feeding the good wolf. And other ways to feed the good wolf would be wake up like we used to do in jail and pray. Before the court case, we were just authentic, transparent prayer warriors. When we pull out of it with our 5th DWI and we see the squad behind us, man, we were almost praying in tongues and we didn't know what tongues were. And I've learned that at the end of the day, what would my life look like if I prayed when things are good? What would my life look like? What would my mental health look like? What would my emotions look like? What would everything look like if I really prayed when... Oh, I got to go all the way through now. What's this one? All right, if I missed you, I still love you. But at the end of the day, so a lot of times we know how to pray, but we stop praying when we get what we want, and we use God as a bail bondsman. And at the end of the day, that's why the 11th step says sought through prayer and meditation if you ever get there, because you're not there until you work the previous 10. Sought through prayer, because you're going to know what to pray for if you work steps 1 through 10. If you just, so it teaches us how to communicate with God, because this isn't a religion, this is a relationship. So Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. Lord, I ask that you think through my mind and speak through my vocal cords, that you created each and every one of us to bear fruit, and we need to get a deeper understanding not only to how to obtain it, not to lose it, and to evolve from it. Lord, I ask for forgiveness of all the things that are in me that are not of you. Lord, I love you so much. I thank you for this incredible group of men and women that are here tonight. And I ask that you honor our efforts. I do believe I'm studied to show myself approved unto you. And I do believe that you're going to take over at a level that is undeniable. In your name we pray, amen. Let's give God a hand. So I say this often, but I was the type of guy that would fake it. I never really knew the true meanings of things, and I wasn't disciplined or diligent enough to do the work to find out what it really meant. So I no longer live my life in assumptions. If I don't know it, I'm going to ask. I'm going to look at it through the internet or whatever. So the definition of focus is a center of interest. And a lot of us don't know why we're interested in things that we rather wouldn't be interested in. I remember my interest level for cocaine and meth. I was very interested in that drug. So I had to ask God how to change my interest level. And some of us don't know about God, we're not so sure about God, or we can't really understand who God is. So we need to ask God to help us understand him. And that's a real blessing. I think that could even benefit our human relationships. But the definition of focus is a center of interest. Whatever you're interested in will be your center. Let me say that again. Whatever you're interested in will be your center. And I just needed God to change my interest. You hear it said about BSM, Serenity, Hazelden, all these different places, Teen Challenge, Metro Hope, AA, NA, CMA, SA, GA. People get all twisted up and say, well, all you're going there to do is get brainwashed. But at the end of the day, my brain needed to be washed. Straight up filth. Straight up filth. So that's no different than asking God to change your interests. So the definition goes, ability, attraction, attention, a point of concentration. So whatever you're interested in has got you attracted to that very thing. And you more or less will spend a lot of time, energy, and money in the area that you're interested in. And it goes on to say the activity, you're going to spend a lot of time in that area of interest, and it's going to get your attention. And there's a lot of things in our life that we wish didn't get our attention, and that's why we need God. It says a point of concentration, where the thing I was interested in didn't allow me to concentrate. I want you to think about that, how bamboozled your brain got on dope, alcohol, sex, and gambling. It messed with our concentration, and it was a trick, so all we would do is concentrate on that. A state or condition. So I want to ask you, whatever you were interested in that got you here, what type of condition did it leave you in? And that's why we need to ask God to change our interests. And it says a condition. Now it says permitting. Now, I'm a chronic relapser. Okay? I used to be a chronic relapser. And there was something about me that gave myself permission that I could use again. They teach us in AA that step one is the one you got to do perfectly or as close to perfect as possible. What gives you or I permission after the track record we got that if we go drink or drug or whatever we do, that we're going to be okay? The thing is, we know we're not going to be okay, but because we don't feel okay, we use it to make ourselves think we're going to be okay if we do it. And we give ourselves permission, and I'm grateful for Serenity and AA where you relapse, fall down for the 20th time, and we welcome you back because that's what we're going to do. But we also got to ask the person, what gave you permission to do that? Because you've got to give you permission. So it says, permitting a clear perception and understanding. So when you get to know, now, did I understand why I smoke crack? And why I put crack in front of my kids and my company and all the different things? It made no sense, but I did it. So you may not understand why you got to work a program, why you got to go to small group, why you need a sponsor, why you got to work the steps, why you got to be of service. But if you already went through the whole addiction thing and you didn't understand why you did it, why not try this? And you don't have to understand initially. But once you start doing it, you'll gain an understanding. Because there is a lot of people in this room that have things spiritually that they never had. If you got it spiritually, you're going to get it naturally. See, a lot of us are trying to get it naturally before we learn spirituality. This isn't about a religion. This is about a spiritual condition. So the definition of fruit is anything produced. So what did your addiction produce? Because it produced a result. And it was our point of interest, and it got our attraction. We were active in it. And we spent a lot of time, money, and resources on it. So what it produced was, they told me this years ago, jails, institutions, and death. I've flatlined, I've overdosed, I've done all those things. But until I changed my interest and my focus, that's all I'm ever going to be. And if it's all I'm ever going to be, I'm going to be in jail, or I'm going to be in an institution, or I'm going to be dead. And this isn't new to us. Evaluate your life and evaluate others that are no longer with us. And it goes on to say accruing, and that means accumulating. When God is giving you fruit, you accumulate things. That's the difference now between a builder and a rebuilder. I am a great rebuilder. I am a great start over guy. I am the comeback kid. But I never knew how to build. And the fruit I'm going to talk to you about tonight will be accumulated in your life. And it says a product, a result, or effect, a return, or a profit. There is a result to every activity you do. There is a result to, tomorrow will be more or less defined by your choices today. Let me say that today. And let me talk about choice. You're free and I'm free to choose anything I want to in life. But I can't choose the consequence of the choice. And that's what's so profound to really recognize. Now it says in John 15, the key to producing fruit is focusing on Jesus. And now when people hear that word Jesus, they flip out. I mean, if I said Bob, you wouldn't cringe. Maybe some of you would. But Jesus is misrepresented by all of us because we're not him. And when we try to represent him, we got to be careful and just be real that we're not him. But key to producing fruit is focusing on Jesus. It says, I am the vine, the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. For those of us that know about gardening, which I think is anyone in this room, your garden is only as good as the garden. Your garden is only as good as the gardener. I mean, it's very important to me that my grass is plush. So you can be on the same street as me and have dead grass because you're not a good gardener. So God the Father is the gardener, and Jesus is saying that he's the vine. And he goes on to say, he cuts off every branch in me that does not bear fruit. Have you ever been cut off? Being cut off is not fun. It says that he cuts off every branch that does not bear fruit. While every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes. Say prunes. So that we will be even more fruitful. In your recovery, you'll come to find if you're not working in a program, you might get cut off. You will find out in your recovery, when you're doing good, God will prune you so he can do even better. Now, I want you to take a moment and think about who God has pruned out of your life. And when God pruned that person out of your life, you were mad. It's not just a person, it could be a thing, it could be an area, it could be a house, it could be a demographic, it could be anything, and God prunes it so you can get better, but at the time you're mad at God. But reflecting back on it, if God wouldn't have done that, you would have never been where you're at today. So we have to understand that God is in the pruning business. I've seen so many people come and go, and it goes on to say, you already are clean because of the word I had spoken to you. So Jesus is about ready to depart. Jesus is about ready to experience the death, the cross, the death, and the resurrection. So he's telling his disciples, what I told you is got to remain in you. Now I want to take it to a recovery standpoint. What you hear here, what do you do with it? Do these words remain in you once you leave here? Or do you go back to the very person that you were before you got here? And then recovery isn't remaining in you, and it says, the word that I give you will clean you. The 12 steps will clean you. The 24-hour-a-day devotional will clean you. The NA basic text will clean you. The GA, more or less, big book will clean you. Any of these tools that are biblical tools, Jesus is telling us, will clean us. And he says, I have already told you to do this. Now you got to remain in what I told you. And I want you to do an examination of your life. How many times when you didn't, when I say you, I'm talking about me too, how many times when you didn't remain in what you learned in these rooms, what happened to you? And that's what Jesus is saying. He says, remain in me, and I also in you. So I want the 12 steps to be in me. I don't want the 12 steps only to be in me when I'm in small group or listening to somebody talk about them. I want them to be in me every day of the week. I want to remain. And it's talking about now a relationship with Jesus. It says, no branch can bear fruit by itself. Now that's going to trip you up, because at the end of the day, without Jesus, without a program, you might be able to go get a job. You might get back into your house because you look better and you're not using. You might actually make some money, but at the end of the day, I want you to think about when you didn't remain in the program and in Jesus, and it says you can do nothing now, okay? So all that something that you accumulated ended up to be nothing. Don't look at me like I'm crazy. Because when your run was over, you had a whole bunch of nothing. And the reason why we had a whole bunch of nothing is because the program, Jesus, did not remain in us. And he goes on to say, it's so important to grasp this. He says, you can't bear it by yourself. This is not an I program. This is a we program. He says, neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine and you are the branches. Now I want you to think about something in regards to fruit. Jesus is the core. He's the vine. You are the branches. So if you look at your arm as a branch, what are you holding at the end of the branch? What do you bring to the table? What do? You see two trees up here, and I'm going to get into that in a minute, but it says that I am the branches. You are the branches. See that word if, I wish that word wasn't there. Will this program remain in you, which is Jesus? If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So where the devil tricks you is you think you're doing something because you got a job. You're back in your home. And you think you're doing something. And you are actually doing something without Jesus. And he lets us do that. It's free will. But your something will always end up as nothing. And nothing to me is painful. At the end of my nothing are severe consequences. And that's why I'm here. He says, apart from me, you can do nothing. If you want to remain in me, you are like a branch thrown away and withers. Have you ever seen somebody that was working a program start to wither? You know where they're headed. I've been that guy. He's saying, apart from me, you're going to wither, thrown away. Where are we thrown away to? We throw ourselves right back to the addiction. It says you're thrown away and wither. Such branches are picked up and thrown into fire and burned. So now this is the key of this parable, that there's 4 types of fruit. The first type of fruit is no fruit. Like you have no spiritual fruit. The next type of fruit is some fruit. And you see the progression here if you remain in him. The next one is more fruit, and the one after that is much fruit. In order for you to get more fruit, you have to recognize you got some fruit. And after God gives you more on top of your some, he's going to give you much. But some of us don't even recognize that we have no fruit. Say no fruit.
No fruit.
Now it says in verse 7, if you remain in me, my words remain in you. So none of us see Jesus tonight. When you leave here, you might have recognition of our faces from small group or your faces or whatever, but you're not with us anymore. And he's not with them now after he departs. But what stays with him, them are his words. If the words you learn in AA and here and at BSM, Serenity, or Hazelin, or wherever, New Way, if they do not stay in you, you're going to default. So it's very important, say remain.
Remain.
So it goes on to say that my words remain in you, and whatever you wish, it will be done for you. Now, a lot of us don't know God, so we give God a wish list. And what God is saying, the one thing, since you can't see me, that you don't see me walking on the aisle, so what I teach you has got to remain in you. And now what he's saying, whatever you wish for, it will be done for you. So a lot of us, what he's saying here is, if your wish aligns with my word, it will happen. If you don't know his word, your prayer is only a wish, and God doesn't answer wishes. His will for you is better than your will for you. So what do you know what his will is? We'll start with what his will isn't. Shooting meth. That is not his will for you. Leaving your family, going to jail and all those different things. Sometimes he'll put us in jail to get our attention, but we really put ourselves there. And he goes on to say this, to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit. Say much fruit. So when God blesses you, it isn't to glorify you, it's to glorify him. And if he gets the glory, he's going to give you more and in turn much fruit. But a lot of us are just trying to seek this fruit on our own. And we get it because we're talented, but it never lasts. And he says, by bearing much fruit, showing yourselves that you are my disciple. That's what's so profound about a testimony where the devil tried to kill you, because if you can get this, if you can get God, the most skeptical non-believer is going to start to possibly believe because they saw what you used to be like. And when they see you with fruit, it's going to blow their mind. So if you look at these trees, one of these trees has to do with captivity. And within captivity, we do a lot of things when we're bearing bad fruit. I want you to think about this tree as your life, that tree as your life. Within that, you're going to pick up shortcomings, lies, fear, judgment, guilt, and shame. I mean, shame is basically guilt versus shame. Guilt is, I made a mistake. Shame is, I am the mistake. There's a big difference. See, a lot of us have made mistakes. All of us have. Anyone makes mistakes. So I made a mistake is different than I am a mistake. So it talks about doubt, unforgiveness. So these are the things that are in our life. And they're not good things, and it makes us come into captivity. Now, the good fruit, the good tree, the good life, the freedom life, has to do with freedom where there's goodness, gentleness, kindness, joy, self-control, faithfulness, long-suffering, and love. And at the end of the day, we were operating in this fruit dimension of description in our addiction without knowing it. I had to be the kindest person in the world to get one more. I love my dope. I was willing to go long-suffering to stay in addiction. I was faithful to crack. I found joy in it. Something that was killing me. So these things should not be that foreign to us. But these things that are on a bad tree, just because it's a bad tree doesn't mean it's a bad person. Just the manifestation of what's rooted in the person is not good. Now here's the thing. You are born with this stuff. I don't have time to go there, but the Bible says that the sins of the father will be down to the fourth generation. Somewhere along the line, somebody did something to cause you to be who you are. So that if you're a parent, you should say, I got to break it. Say break it. Break it. So at the end of the day, but at the same time, two sons can grow up in the same home, even though that curse is over their lives. one son chose not to, and one son chose to. And now I want to talk to you about this fruit, because that's basically everything you deal with in the 12 steps. So what type of fruit is stored in you? Matthew 12:35, there are two types of fruit. A good man brings good things out of a good stored up in him. An evil man brings evil things of the evil stored up in him. See, I'm not just talking about talents here, because we're all talented. What emotions do you bring to the table? What thoughts do you bring to the table? Even though you're thinking them, we don't know what you're thinking, but we can see what you're thinking. See, and it says, so the question is, what do you bring? See, if I'm just operating without the 12 steps, what I'm going to bring you is resentment. And beyond me bringing resentment, first I got afraid, because fear is the primary emotion to anger. Before you're angry about it, fear has got to creep in. So my whole life was consisted of, because the tree I had, the life I have, is I just started dishing out my resentments, dishing out my fears and different things, my judgment, my doubt. And what I would do is I would come to a place like, who wants my resentment? Who wants my fear? And things of that nature. And I've learned that along the way, that nobody wants it. That's why you got to say, when people want to give you a piece of their mind, say, I'd rather not take it. And be respectful about it. So what you have inside of you, really a test of what it is what you bring. And I'm not talking about talent, because you can have all the talent in the world, but your emotions are going to take you out. Your feelings are going to take you out. Your thinking is going to take you out. And now it says a person is recognized more or less by what's inside of them. So unfruitful people that we all have been and possibly still are. Galatians 5 says, unfruitful people are filled with these things. The acts of the flesh are obvious. Now, the acts of the flesh are obvious to everyone but the person in the flesh. So if you tell somebody that's got a resentment that they got a resentment, they ain't going to see they got a resentment. You ain't going to be able to talk to some doubter. The doubter's going to try to shut you down. See, when you're in it, you don't see it. They're obvious to our children. They're obvious to the courts. They're obvious to our exes. They're obvious to our employers. They're obvious to our POs, but they're not obvious to us. And that's why the word says the acts of the flesh, which all of us have, sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery. I looked up the definition of that, and that's just wanting to indulge in certain things. It goes on to say idolatry is anything you put before God, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, it's more or less discord. Factions, I had no idea what that meant, so I looked it up. That's trying to cause problems from within. If you're living in one of these homes and you're trying to break up the home, don't do it, because God's going to deal with you. Just leave. Say, just leave. Doesn't mean you're a bad person, you just got a bad tree. Because this program could work for somebody else with a different attitude. And at the end of the day, it's worked ours for 15 years. And it's more or less produced fruit of champions. But it goes on to say factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies are all like, who participates in this fruit? Oh, please. You haven't participated in any of this stuff in your life? Let me get a real show of hands. I mean, if you didn't, I don't know. You probably shouldn't be here. Let me confirm, who has participated in this? And those who aren't raising your hand, give me your ex's phone number, I'll call them. Or give me your PO's number, I'll give them a call, or your kids. So it says, I warn you, as I did before, those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom. You will not inherit this if you're living like this. And this is a byproduct of all the behaviors that I just read you. Because these behaviors cause shortcomings and resentments and character defects and shame and guilt and unforgiveness. I mean, unforgiveness is step 8 and 9. Laziness. I mean, how can you work a program if you're lazy? You weren't lazy in your addiction. So these are things that manifest in our lives, even in our recovery, and they're bad fruit. Say bad fruit. Bad fruit. So it goes on to say now, what is good fruit? Say good fruit. Good fruit can only really be measured with long-term results. You may have good fruit after a year in your program, but a year compared to how many days and months and years you were addicted isn't a long time. I commend you for the year. I was commended for my year, but at the end of the day, this is who fruitful people are. And I want to talk to you about pruning. Because when God sees you put joy in things, God will take the joy you have in your good life and he'll prune it. Whatever your joy is in other than him, he'll take it out of your life. And he'll prune the thing you're getting joy from. It's okay to have joy in people, things, and places. But if that becomes your center area of focus, he'll prune it. And here's what happens when he prunes it. He'll give you more joy if you don't quit. See, where you're going with God, you need more joy. You had this much joy, and then he pruned it, and now you got this much joy. Let me talk to you quickly about kindness. A lot of us are not really that kind with other people, and we're not kind with ourselves. So when your kindness gets pruned, and somebody is an absolute jerk to you, and you want to go street on them, you straight up want to go street. You forgot you're sober. You don't care about your criminal record. You don't care about 3 strikes. You don't forgot everything. You're seeing red. And God prunes your kindness. It's really an opportunity for you to become more kind. Now, here's the thing. I'll prove it to you with patience. And part of patience is kindness. See, when God prunes your patience and you ask God for more patience, God is going to put you in a pretty impatient situation. And he'll prune your patience. Anyway, so you think it's hard now. You try to run BSM Serenity in this church. It's all about long suffering. I was willing to suffer long periods of time in addiction, so I'm willing to suffer long times in these rooms. See, suffering is suffering. So he prunes you and he gives you more. So what I've learned about God is just because he's taking some of it back, and now you're focused on all these things but him, your tree is starting to dissipate. So this is what fruitful people look like. Galatians 5. Fruitful people have the Holy Spirit qualities. Every piece of fruit has seeds. Even bad fruit has seeds. So if I was to eat a salad that had fruit in it, and some of the fruit in my salad had to do with character defects, and this was in the salad is ruined. And I want to take it a step further. So these character defects have seeds. All fruit has seeds. So when I operate in business with Jim, as I often do, and he experiences my character defects, he's not only been given the fruit of my character defects, he's now dealing with the seeds within the fruit. And when a seed is there, it's meant to reproduce. I can teach you what I know, but you can only reproduce who you are. And at the end of the day, would anyone want to reproduce who you are if you are filled with character defects, unforgiveness, laziness, doubt, guilt, fear, resentment, judgment, shortcomings, and lies? You're in captivity and you're trying to get out of prison and you're distributing your negative fruit to people, and you fail to recognize when I distribute doubt to my child, which are now adults, when I'm doubting God, I'm distributing doubt to them, and the doubt that I distributed to them has seeds. And now the doubt is growing in them because the seed and the doubt I gave them now has gotten inside of them, and now they're doubting everything too. It's very important for you to understand, when you distribute this negative fruit, it has seeds. If you go a strawberry, a banana, or whatever it is, you're going to understand when you break that thing open, it's got seeds. Say seeds. Seeds. And seeds are meant to reproduce themselves. So now I love what it says here. What happens when you live God's way? So this fruit is produced by living a different way. This fruit is produced by living a godly way, which none of us really knew what was or weren't doing it when we got here. It's how you live. And here's the thing. When you remain in these rooms, that will birth the opportunity for fruit, but it's the work of what you learn in these rooms that produces the fruit that you'll see on that tree. Now check this out. By living God's way. See, a lot of us come here, I had to go through 11 treatments. Well, my problem is crack. I mean, I just got a quick crack, and I'm good. It's a lie from the pit of hell. Because if I quit crack and I still doubt and I'm lazy and unforgiving, character defects full of shame and guilt and fear and judgment and resentment, shortcomings in life, I'm going to do crack again. So all these things are manifested. So it's about a new way of living. But check this out, because this is your test. That God says, when you live his way, he'll bring gifts into your life. 90% of everything we have in business, real estate, ministry, and housing has to do with God brought it to us. We didn't go out there and chase it. We're not some strategists that think everything's so great and we're so great. No, we started working with what we had and God brought us more. See, we had some fruit. When I had one day of recovery, I had some fruit. So I worked my recovery. I was of service. I studied the rooms. I had a sponsor. I worked the steps. I read the Bible. And then he gave me more fruit. And then now we got much fruit. And it's a never-ending process. So God brings gifts into your life. And there's be one thing if I'm talking to 400 of you and say, well, I don't know about that. Look around the room. God doesn't play favorites. All of us may have different abilities, but what it says here is so true. It says the same way that fruit, say fruit, appears in an orchard. Things like affection for others. All of a sudden you start caring about people. You're not just cared about you. You're not just trying to manifest what you want to manifest. It says exuberance for life. You're actually excited to be sober. I mean, life is totally awesome. Exuberant for life. Serenity, which is calm, peaceful, and untroubled. No matter what happens in your life, you remain calm. You got the peace that doesn't make sense. Trouble will come, you don't go with it. It says develop a willingness to stick with things. Willingness is not just what you're willing to do. You may think you have willingness because you're willing to do certain things you're not willing to do. That is not willingness. Willingness is to do whatever your sponsor says to do. Whatever you're hearing said tonight to do. And it goes on, a sense of compassion in the heart. Let me tell you something. When you start operating in these realms and you ask God to change your interest level, you're going to watch these fruit things pop in your life. A conviction to stay in basic holiness permeates things. What do you do? What is your legacy? What do people say about you? What is at the end of your branch if you're not connected to the vine? It's all that. When they get you, they get resentment. When they get you, they get a victim. When they get you, they get anger and unforgiveness. See, we got to change this, and God is telling us how to change it, and he's teaching us how to change it. But here's the thing. I want my life being connected to the vine to permeate through other people's lives. That's legacy. Not just my family, everyone. Everyone. I want it to permeate. See, here's the thing. Your resentment permeates through everyone's life. Your judgment permeates everyone's life. That stuff is what should be permeating in someone's life, not this. You gotta get rid of this. Now you look at this, and God, this is profound to me, and I'm gonna get really real with you here. We find ourselves involved with loyal commitment. Loyalty is not doing something to get something from what you just did. Let me teach you, 15 years in this ministry thing. People are loyal. They're on the come up and they want to get close, so they're loyal. And when they get what they want, then they're not loyal anymore because it's not what they thought it was. Or there's ones that you'll do stuff in and out of season with. One minute you're with them all the time, the next minute you're not, and now they're not loyal anymore. Your loyalty will be tested. You can't say you're loyal until a long period of time happens, until we make it through some bad times and celebrate the good times, until you're offended, until you want to take your ball and go home at 40 years of age, until you're feeling like a victim and judging everybody in here. That's when we'll know if you're loyal. You're not loyal when you're getting what you need. You're loyal when you don't get anything that you need and you're still here. Say still here. See, at the end of it, it says not needing to force your way in life. When you got this fruit, I don't have to get out ahead of God. I don't have to figure out what's going to go down. I just got to remain in Jesus, and he'll bring stuff to us because he sees us working. You don't have to go force and manipulate your way home or back into your job, and God got all that taken care of. Because you're not connected to him, you think you got something, but you end up with nothing every time. Don't look at me like I'm crazy. You didn't come here with a big stock portfolio in your Benz pulling into the parking lot. A lot of us came here on the bus, and we borrowed money for the bus to get here. That is our nothing. That was me. My parents had to pay for my first month in the sober house. 35 years old. Nothing. Own businesses, own a huge house. At the end of it, I had nothing. Say nothing. It goes on to say this. To marshal means to assemble. I want you to think about the ground you're sitting in. Just because you're sitting in the chair of this property doesn't mean you're loyal to it. But where you're sitting, a lot of things have been marshaled, and I'm not talking about a federal marshal. I'm talking a lot of things have been assembled in 15 years. A lot of things have been organized. And it goes on to say, direct our energies wisely. How can you direct your energy wisely, walking around judging everybody? All your energy goes into proving this wrong and doubting it and laziness. I mean, those who are lazy become more lazy. People with this type of fruit, they don't major in the minors. They don't make mountain out of molehill. When trouble comes, they don't go with it. See, this type of fruit is powerful fruit because you know where to focus. You know where to spend your energies. And now it says this, Proverbs 12, fruitful people speak life and serve diligently. I mean, if you're full of all these things, you're going to speak death. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that, Pastor Jeff. I don't know. Kylie, yeah. He wears that Grateful Dead sweatshirt every day of the week. I don't know about him. Well, maybe you don't need to know about us. Just look at the fruit that God has produced in and through us. So you want to fill people with good things, and the work of their hands brings them rewards. They're speaking life. They're working a program. They're serving. Isaiah 32, fruitful people have peace and confidence. The fruit of the righteousness will be peace. The effect will be quietness and confidence. Let me tell you something. When you operate in this fruit, when you got ADD, ADHD, and you can be totally chill, it is absolutely awesome. And God doesn't just do it for me. He can do it for you. But you got to cut this bad boy down. You got to cut this bad boy down that has been, more or less come in your life. Leviticus 26, fruitful people have favor and security. Have you ever met somebody that's got favor? The Bible says if you do it God's way, you'll have favor with men and God. I got clients that don't even know why they do business with. God goes into their spirit and says, do business with him. Borrow him that $1 million. You walk in and it's favor. Say favor. You ain't got favor, you ain't got fruit. And the favor's different. Favor's the same, but it's different. See, you might get a $1 million loan, and that's favor, but you may be down at Salvation Army and you got the ticket to have a bet. That's still favor. So if you learn to appreciate favor, you'll get more favor. And it's so profound to me, you will make you fruitful and increase your numbers. Why would you follow someone or something that isn't growing? God is not stagnant. And it says, you will increase your numbers and I will keep covenant with you. Let me tell you something. When you got this debauchery going and all this craziness going, and you come against something God's doing, you better recognize that God's got covenant with them. When God's got covenant with a person that's helping people and things don't go right and you don't like it, own it or leave. But don't infect the environment. And at the end of the day, we've been dealing with it for 15 years, spinning out, saying this, saying that. At the end of the day, that brother who left last month that called him everything under the book, he's still here and that brother's getting high. And that brother's a good brother. He just didn't recognize what realm he was operating in. And you got to say, teach it. So it goes on to say now, the fruit of the righteous is they help people. The one who is wise saves lives. For a minute, if somebody is interested in helping another person, for a minute, I want you to use your common sense. Don't you think God would equip that person to help that other person? But if you're not interested in helping anybody but yourself, God ain't going to equip you. You're not remaining in him. Those who are interested in being a vessel of saving lives on God's behalf, God's going to equip them. Don't mess with them. If you don't agree with them, just go about your business. Sit here. And here you'll be sitting here and this might happen to you. Guilt will fall on your head. Sit on your tree. And at the end of the day, we have to realize that. I mean, I say this all the time. There's a chance that our children could be addicts. That's generational. I don't speak that into existence. I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. But let's say your neighbor has an alcohol problem. And last week you were mowing your lawn that isn't watered and it's whatever else. And what happens is you're bad-mouthing Serenity or BSM or Hazelden or New Way or Teen Challenge. And that's the only place they can get into, but they won't go to it because you bad-mouthed it. If you ain't got nothing to say, don't say it. because it may not have been for you, but it could be for them. So I don't want to be sitting under my dead tree dispersing my bad fruit that had seeds that reproduce within themselves. Say, help people. Help people. It says in Psalm 1:3, fruitful people know about different seasons. This is where I see a lot of people. You can do the right thing at the wrong time and get the wrong result. You got to understand your family's going to be there. You got to work a program. The dream job's out there, but if you get the dream job without character, you're going to lose the dream job. And it goes on to say, that person is like a tree planted. Don't be so offended when people try to bury you. Do you understand that people can't bury a person that's already planted? I'm planted in kingdom ground. And the kingdom ground is fruitful. It says, which yields in fruit. And see, so we opened one house. We had no idea what God was going to do. We worked with the 6 men, and God brought us another house, and another house, and another house. Then he brought us a church, and he brought us businesses, and all these things, because we just worked with what we had. And it says, will yield fruit in season. Those whose leaves do not wither. We didn't wither. We didn't quit. No matter what it was like when all these people were distributing their captivity to us. And we didn't quit. And it says, whatever they do prosper. Have you ever met a person that whatever they touch works? I'm telling you, get around those people. You may not be able to sit in their office or go in their car, but get in their proximity. Just get around them, and it will rub off on you, just like a resentment rubs off on you. Yeah. Kindness will run off. Generosity will run off on you. It'll do it. And I love what it says here. Now, so the question I have you as we begin to get ready to close, has your life been unfruitful? Your strength will be spent in vain. 35 years old, own businesses, own a house, 3-car garage. All my energy, when it was all said and done, was spent in vain. I had nothing left. Nothing left but pain and divorce and bankruptcy, all these things that hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, because your soil will not yield its crop. Let me tell you something. If you're planted in this soil, and if you're sitting in a seat in this soil, you're not loyal to the soil, and you're not even planted just because you're here. You're planted when you start serving here. And here's the thing. I mean, if I'm a young kid that wants to play football, and somebody that's got fruit and has done well in football, I want to be around and learn from that guy. So it's so, I mean, a lot of us we trip about people that are successful. And we envy them. I mean, if I envied Bishop T.D. Jakes as my spiritual father and Bishop Earl Gilchrist, I would not be able to receive from them. And I said that to you a long time ago. Your sponsors don't get paid to sponsor you. I mean, think about that for a second. You come in here banged up, tore up from the floor up, agitated, constipated, and irritated, but yet somebody's still willing to work with you for free. But we still don't listen to them. Something's wrong with the soil. Something's wrong with the person. Not that they're bad, it's not shame, but something's amiss. It says, nor will your trees of your land yield fruit. It says now in Matthew 12:33, what are you known for? You got to change what you're known for. It says a tree is identified by its fruit. If a tree is good, the fruit will be good. If the tree is bad, its fruit will be bad. See, don't ever go and argue with the person that's got fruit when you got nothing. It's like getting a job at a company and telling the owner of the business how to run the business. It's like trying to tell these two or Doug or Pastor Scott how to run Serenity when you've been here 2 weeks and you're mad because you got your weekend pass taken away after you just smoked meth and snuck out the window. Say, that's me. It was me too. When I was in Crossroads, I was sorting lines under the bed and had vodka in my Gatorade bottle. I ain't cast no judgment. I'd done it. And then when they kicked me out in my hefty garbage bag and I just left, I didn't throw stones. I said, yeah, I did it. But I'm not it. And I will not quit. So do not resent your relapse. Understand sometimes relapse is part of recovery, and so you're identified by your fruit. But I see people with no fruit arguing with people that do. Quite frankly, if the brother really's got fruit, he ain't going to argue with you. He ain't got time to argue with you. I mean, it's just like Bishop Jakes taught me years ago when he wrote an article for the Huffington Post, and the guy, he got all these negative reviews, and the editor of the Huffington Post said, well, I don't think I should do it. No one likes what I'm doing. And he says, our audience doesn't have time to write reviews. People with fruit ain't got time to argue. People with fruit, they're going to love you through your stuff. But I love this particular parable, Luke 13, 6 and 9. How many years has God waited for you? 20-some years for me. It says he told the parable, Jesus says, a man had a fig tree growing in a vineyard. And when he went to look for fruit on it, he didn't find any. So he said to the man who took care of the vineyard, for 3 years, I've been coming to look for fruit on this fig tree, this person, and haven't found any. Cut it down. So God puts you in a program, puts you in a meeting, goes, gets you a sponsor, all these things, and God walks into your life, and that's all he sees. That's all he sees. And the man that walked into the vineyard, he says, well, cut it down. I mean, you're taking up a bet at BSM, man. You ain't even working a program. I mean, geez, rent's getting paid, Serenity. The guy next to you, man, he's flourishing because he's in the soil. He's loyal to it. He's serving in it. He's flourishing. He's got reconciliation in his family. He's saving his money. He's helping guys. But in the bed next to him, there's none of that. And the man says, maybe that guy, he's just taking up space. Because I've given him opportunity to grow, to get that. But he doesn't seem to want to take it. Goes on to say, sir, the man replied, leave it alone for 1 more year. And I'll dig around it and fertilize it. If it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, cut it down. What this tells us about God is this, that God gives second chances. But with God, there is a final chance. And that's who we buried over these last several years. They had their final chance. And you don't know if your next relapse will be your final chance. He gives second 100 chances, but you don't know your next one could be your final one. The Bible says, dig it up. So you walk over to this new life, these new opportunities, and God says, dig around it. So you start circling the program and you start working the steps and you're digging around it through the 12 steps. I admitted I was powerless and my life had become unmanageable. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I'm digging into this now, Jesus. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. Admitted to God, another human being, and myself the exact nature of my wrongs. Became entirely ready to have God remove my defects of character. Humbly asked God to remove my shortcomings. Became willing to make amends to all the people my tree caused. Made direct amends wherever possible when stepped to do so would injure them, others. Continued to take personal inventory, and when I was wrong, I promptly admitted. Sought through prayer, I'm digging it up. I'm digging it up. I ain't feeling the good fruit, but I'm digging up. I'm digging into me. I ain't running from me. I'm digging into me. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve. I don't see the love. I don't see the kindness yet. But God, you told me to dig it up. Dig me up. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God, praying only for the knowledge of his will and the power to carry out. Hold up. Having had a spiritual, that I can be faithful, that I can love God, other people, that I will suffer for somebody that's hurting, that this freedom is my spiritual awakening because I was willing to dig up my past. As a result of digging it up. So what did I dig up? It goes on to say, as a result of these steps, I tried to carry the message tonight. I carried the message tonight, these trees and that trees. And I carried the message tonight on those who are digging. But I want to finalize this message to tell you that it's going to take practice with these principles in all my affairs. See, here's the thing. But it didn't say just dig it up. It didn't just say dig it up. It said fertilize it. So when I worked my step one, I quit lying to myself. I am a drug addict in the flesh, and my life is extremely unmanageable. And I took my bad fruit, and the next thing I did is I began now to really realize that I have to come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to the lies. The sanity comes. And then I make a decision. So I dig it up, and I began to watch this tree dissipate. So I make a decision, but now I got to dig up my resentments. I pull them off my bad tree, and I talk to you about it in group. And in turn, I wrote it down on a piece of paper, and I dug up my resentments. And after I dug up my resentments, I dug up my fear, and I dug it up, and I took it off the tree. So now I have to admit to you about my fears and resentments, and I pull my laziness off. Now take into account, I'm digging around the good life and the good tree, and I pull my laziness off, and I admit to you, another human being, the exact nature of my wrong. But now, I'm willing to look at this. My character defects, I became entirely ready to have God remove these now because I've already taken these out of my life. And now it's time for me to take this out of my life. And I'm not done yet. Then I humbly ask him, remove my shortcomings. I take it out of my life, and I talk about it, and I process it, and I write it down. And then I get to 8 and 9. And I deal with these amends. And I take them off my bad life, and I begin to talk about them and this unforgiveness that I feel, and I direct towards other people. But at the end of the day, I can't afford this unforgiveness. It's too expensive because I already talked about my fears and resentments, and that helped me with my 8-step list. So now I conduct my 9. I make my direct. So there's a lot of people that I need to make amends. So I take it off my bad life, and I put up. So now, man, I judged you today. And I was wrong. And wrong don't feel right no more. I dealt with that and my character defects and my shortcomings, and I told God I turned my life over to him. I came to the realization in step 2, and at the end of the day in step 1, I understood this, and now I feel a little ashamed and guilt about it, but how I release working a program of shame and guilt is I sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact. And once I did that, the guilt was gone because there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. But it doesn't just say dig it up. So here it is. I dug it out of my old life. I didn't hit start over this time. I didn't go get my old job back. I didn't run home and play house. I dug it up. Say dig it up. Because it says dig it up. The 12 steps dug the ground round. But here's the thing. It says fertilize it. What's fertilizer? Crap. So I took all my crap and I talked about it. I talked about my crap. And after I dug it up, steps 1 through 12, I dug up, and I started to fertilize. Here, take my guilt. Take it. Take my shortcomings. Fertilize my character defects. Fear, all this, my resentments, all these are fertilizer for working the steps and digging it up. The Bible says as we close, Romans 8:28, look at my crap. Fertilize my growth. My resentments, my judgment, all this stuff is now on the root of my tree that I dug up. And you got to dig it up in order to grow. Hear me clear here. God took all my crap, my SHIT, the best manure there ever was. And I worked the steps and I dug it up. And then I brought everything. My working of the steps did the digging. But what the steps revealed to me is what I had to fertilize the new life with. God says in Romans 8:28 that he works all things together. He worked my guilt, my doubt, my judgment, my sin, my addiction. He worked it all, and he built this new life because it was my fertilizer. Don't resent your crap.
Your crap is the greatest fertilizer. And he says, I'm going to work it. None of that is good. None of that fertilizer. You don't go smell dung. You need to get your head examined if you got your nose up in that. I got a pit bull now. I don't chase around the yard wondering what. Anyway, I'll leave it alone. But you know what? He took my addiction and he started a program in a church. Brought the father back to the children. He did it all. Say, dig it up. Dig it up. Say, dig it up. Dig it up. Say, fertilize it. Fertilize it. And you watch God grow your life. Don't tell me he can't do it. He did it for me and he'll do it for you. Focus is a choice. This is a choice. You choose to stay here, you choose captivity. You choose to dig it up and fertilize it with your crap, you choose freedom. What choice will you choose? This could be your last chance. God bless you. I love you.